Hello and welcome. Well, as I said, PM Express London edition, we've been talking to a cross section of Ghanaians, right from the top to the bottom, all with beautiful and inspiring stories. But this one is really good because this is about a woman, and anytime a woman aspires to the top, society, wherever you are, need to support and appreciate it, because in any society where women do well, the society does well, and that's just it. And here we are with a very gallant Ghanaian woman who is the immediate past mayor of the borough of Harrow. And I am glad to talk to her and going to hear her beautiful story. Now, Nana Asante, thank you very much for granting us this interview.
My pleasure.
And I just want to start by asking if you were born in Harrow, Weald, Harrow Town Centre, because how?
No, interestingly, not at all. I was actually born in Tel Aviv, Israel. And Israel. And my brother and I were born there, and partly because my dad was the chargé d'affaires there, and he opened our first embassy after independence in Israel.
I see. So you grew up in Israel?
No, we didn't, because what happened was Daddy was recalled to Accra. He came to work in African affairs with Nkrumah, and so we grew up in Ghana. So I left Israel as a baby. In fact, I didn't go back till 2 years ago. Oh. So 50 odd years later was my first time going to Israel. So,
I see.
Yeah, since I was born there.
So had a good growing up in Ghana?
No, because Dad was posted to Switzerland. He was in charge of Geneva, Bern, Vienna. And so we were there for a number of years of school, from 67 to 72.
So that's where the French comes from?
That's where, yes, I am fluent in French. That's where it comes from. That's right. And then in 72, we went back to Ghana, and I went to boarding school. Achimota, so I had a spell in Ghana and got
Motown chick. Motown chick. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, you well versed in your Ghana culture and.
Well, you still learn. You still learn all the time. But I must say, it was culture shock to get back to Ghana. When you grew up as a child outside but it was good grounding. One of my regrets is that my children didn't have a spell in Ghana, because that would give them, as I did, because actually it's very valuable. You realize that you have some confidence, and you'll be surprised, the confidence that comes from having been to school in Ghana is fantastic when you have to deal with people in this country.
Let me dwell on that though, because I thought because of our overly Presbyterian upbringing, as I say.
Presbyterian.
I'm a Presbyterian too, so we're all guilty of it. Yeah. I thought that upbringing made you a bit timid,
No. Actually, I think, it's a mixture of things. You learn boundaries, but you also learn to appreciate who you were. I mean, it's not just that as a child of God, you are precious in God's sight, but apart from that, you learned, maybe it's partly because of Daddy's involvement with Nkrumah, you learn that African personality, confidence in yourself as an African. So it was a mixture of all that, and I think it gives you a certain self-confidence. When you meet other Africans, because I call people from the Caribbean Africans of the diaspora, and you find that sometimes they have this lack of confidence, which we have as people who have a roots and we know who we are. Then you realize how valuable it is to have a Ghanaian education.
If you don't know who Daddy is, stay tuned. You will find out who Daddy is, but I'm not giving it out yet. But I'm interested in that. Have we lost it, or do we still have it? Because I just picked up and said, that African sense of African, the black identity. Have we lost that? I can feel you got that going through Achimota. In today's Ghana, do we still have it, or have we lost it?
I think we're in danger of losing it, and we need to get it back. I mean, sometimes when I talk to Ghanaians, I was home in March. There's this sense of always putting ourselves down. I know things are a mess. I mean, don't get me wrong. We can see it. Lights going off and water not running and all that. Those things are an irritation, and they don't help anybody, and it's enough to put you off. Having said that, we need to recapture our sense of who we are, because actually we are wonderful people. We have done a lot of things, and we need to also stop letting people push us around. I mean, I'm sorry, you got Ebola in Liberia and whatnot. America sends what? Soldiers? At least Cuba sends doctors. We need to challenge such stupidity. What are you sending soldiers for? The people are ill. We are not at war. You get me? So, but I think there was a time when we had the confidence to challenge But now we're always talking about our partners, and partnership is a partnership of equals.
Let's go back to Achimota. We'll get there. So how was, secondary school in Achimota those days?
I would say that it was, first of all, it was a bit shocking. You know, when you read about boarding school and things, you read an Blighton, and that's what we read. No matter what people said, you read those things. You read the Secret Seven and Famous Five. All those books that you read as children. You get this impression that boarding school is a lark. Boarding school in Ghana is tough, from scrubbing floors to the bells and to all that. But it's part of the formation and the giving you a sense of what you need to do in society. So it's interesting. Children actually run the school. Achimota, in my day, there were about 1,000 of us on the two compounds, and you actually didn't see adults. You saw them in class. You had housemasters and housemistresses, but you didn't see them. You had this hierarchy and the seniors, the monitors. You ran the school, and it was run efficiently. You know, so you just look at what can be done if you give people the tools.
Never thought of it like that.
Okay.
Was the the dorm master, the dorm prefect, and the compound prefect, and the bathroom, and
we kept the school clean. It means that we have the ability to do things. And you know, when you read in the books, because let's face it, our boarding schools are based on the English public school system. This is well, they don't do half the work we do. Somebody else lays their bed, somebody else does this, or we did the work ourselves. You know, from the morning when you wake up to cleaning the bathrooms to doing everything, we cleaned it. We kept it clean. And therefore, sometimes when I look at the state of our streets and things, there's no excuse for it. We have the ability to, keep the place tidy.
That's a very simple. I've never thought of it. Yes, there was housemasters, but they came in, exactly. At the crunch. Otherwise, from waking up in the morning and tidying up and going was all done by the prefects.
Yeah.
We have the ability. So, did you do university in Ghana, or you?
I did. I was at Legon. I was at Legon. I did French Arabic. So
okay.
Yeah. So that was my degree.
Going back to your roots.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. So I was there I was in Legon and of course it was the time when we kept on closing the universities because of Aluta and whatnot. So it was a long stretch, because the universities were closed twice while I was there. So it was.
For those of you who stay tuned, this is KB Asante's daughter. See, it was worthwhile staying tuned. Now, how was Daddy growing up? Because now I know him now, and I know he's very patriotic, and his hobby is Ghana. I can say his hobby is Ghana. Was he the same growing up with him?
Yeah, growing up with Dad was fun because you heard all the stories of Nkrumah's time, of things that they did, and you got that feeling which I feel we've lost, of the time of independence was a time of promise. We knew, what it said, Nkrumah said, the independence of Ghana is meaningless without the total liberation of the African continent. I mean, finally we got rid of apartheid in South Africa, but the inequality remains. So it's as if we don't realize that the second stage of the battle is on. And instead of, girding our loins and getting on with it, we've sort of given up. And I think that's what's a pity. And I think it must be depressing for people of their age, because they saw us through colonial times to independence. Because what I know, Dad came to Durham in 1948, went to university there, and you can imagine what it was like in those days. They haven't seen many of us Africans. They thought, in fact, they still think most of us come from a jungle. We don't know how anything runs. And I think sometimes you don't realize that actually they haven't moved on. But we need to not imbibe that they have this idea that we can't do anything. Meanwhile, we know we can. Our continent is in a mess. And actually that's an indictment on all of us. We need to change that. Most of us sat quiet while they got rid of Gaddafi. And we just listened to their silly stories. At the end of the day, it was Gaddafi who was going back to that whole thing of African unity and African power and all that. He had an airline called Africair, which means the African. Look at that. But we seem to just go along with their silliness. And yet we need to decide what is in Africa's interests, what is in Ghana's interests.
Well, I can see how frustrated your dad would be. How about mom? I don't.
Yeah, mom was here in 1947. She came a year before that, and she did nursing.
Okay.
And then became a midwife, a community health nurse, etc. And she was also. It was interesting to hear them. She was also in the. There was a Gold Coast Union, and she was the treasurer. And Dad was the president. That's how they met. Yeah, so she was very much in there as well. And she tells you, and sometimes talking to the old folks is interesting, because she tells you about the time. You know, we hear about the Mau Mau, which actually their true name is the Land and Freedom Army. And then the title is, and you know, the clue is in the name. They were fighting for land and freedom in Kenya. If you notice, we had the mosquito. So it kept these guys away. Whereas in Kenya, in Southern Africa, they stayed and took over land and confiscated it and started, you know, as if Africans didn't own the land they came to. So she was saying that around the time of the Land and Freedom Army uprisings, the colonial government had these propaganda films trying to say that these people are barbaric and things. And it was the West Africans, led by Gold Coast students, who turned up at those meetings and actually put them in their place.
I see.
And it's that sort of thing that we seem to have lost. And these were colonial students. We have had independence.
Angry students, if I may say. Not in a bad way.
No, not in a bad way, but in a positive way, that you cannot
frustrated
put us
about my
down.
system.
Yeah, you cannot put us down, and we will not have it. I don't know if you've heard about the recent exhibition. You know, in the 19th century, they used to have zoos where they put Africans for people to come and look at, and put us in cages.
Who had a big backside, and therefore, yes.
And more. So some silly white South African thought that it would be instructive. He thinks it's fighting a racism to actually reenact that, and there was a campaign against it. But I mean, how dare they? Why are you putting us down as if we are animals be put in a cage to be gulped at?
Because they will never reenact the Holocaust, will they?
That's just the point, because nobody would think that's acceptable. And they said we were censoring it because it was art. And you know how these people shut it down? There was a petition of over 20,000 signatures, and there was a demonstration outside the show. And the theme was the show must not go on. And just listening to these people, when they decided to cancel the show, they said, oh, the people were brandishing drums. Have drums now become a weapon? You know, it's funny how they, you know how powerful journalism is. They're using their words to put down the protest. But I'm pleased that they managed to shut it down. We don't have many victories these days, so we have to savor these victories. You know, that's so true.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm going to take a break, and then when I come back, I'm going to find out. Such a true Ghanaian, frustrated about his system. How does she end up as the mayor of Harrow? Don't move. Hello and welcome back to this very exciting conversation, and I'm here with Nana Asante, who's the immediate past mayor of Harrow. And if you want to Google Harrow, you realize her responsibility, how big the area is, and what exactly she did. But how did she end up being the mayor? That she's got, you know, you can tell she's being, you know, true Ghanaian and all things black, and you know, so. And Harrow is not predominantly black, you know, it's fairly white and mostly, you know, Asian, and then a splash of black in there. So how does she end up being the mayor?
Well, one of the things is that, first of all, you must get involved in politics and in the system. So I did get involved in politics around 92. I joined the Labour Party at the time, although I've left now. That's another story. So you get involved. And then I remember, was it in 2002, somebody asked me, stand for council. And I said, oh, no, not me. And in the end, she convinced me, because I was saying, oh, let somebody else stand, let my husband stand, not me. But she said, no, we want more women. And actually, I ended up being the first African from the continent on the council. So I stood for council, and we were there. I went for 3 terms, so 2002, then 2006, and 2010. And in 2010, there came a time, you know, you look at options within the system, and I decided, let me put in for deputy mayor, and I won the election within my group. And so it went to full council, and I became deputy mayor. And I was, and the next year, of course, our system is the deputy mayor becomes the mayor. And you get elected by your peers, so it's other councillors who elect you. So that was how in 2013, May, I became the mayor of Harrow.
Beautiful. But how do the other councillors get on there?
All of us have to stand for election.
Okay.
And in fact, there are 21 wards in Harrow and 3 councillors per ward, so 63 councillors in all. And you all stand for election every 4 years.
When you say a ward, what do we mean?
A ward is an area of about 8,000 people, 4,000 homes.
Okay.
So that's the area. So each ward, and there are 21 of them within the Harrow area. Harrow has a population of about 200,000. 205, 206,000. That's
really?
the population of Harrow.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, and so it's divided into these 21 wards, and we hold elections every 4 years, and that's how you become a councillor. And Harrow has chosen a system of a ceremonial mayor. So the mayor is elected by other councillors to chair council meetings and to be the representative in the community. So when people are having their festivals and their events, they invite you and you go and grace the occasion.
And so you represent sort of the council.
You do.
So
Absolutely.
basically like bringing people closer to
the
council,
local authority. Yeah.
Now, how does Harrow work? I mean, let's say if we have £100, how do you then divide this £100 into Harrow? Would all the £100 come from Harrow, or would part of it come from the state? And how do you divide it?
Well, basically, the £100 that Harrow has to spend, 80 of it comes from central government and 20 is raised locally by a system we call the council tax, where every household is asked to pay a certain amount depending on the value of the house. It's a kind of system they've come to. Your house is graded either A, B, C, or D, and you pay accordingly. And that council tax is set once a year in February. And it often depends on how much we get from government. And then we decide what the gap is within our budget and try and raise it. However, one of the the ironies of it is people want you to spend money on services you don't want to pay. And therefore, if you raise council tax a little too much, you might not get elected. So you have all parties trying not to raise council tax or to reduce it.
But they want the services.
But they want the services, so it creates a tension. And of course, we now got this very right-wing government at the center who have decided that, we must cut the deficit. I always find it interesting. They find money for war, but can't find money for services. So basically, they want to cut services, and therefore they keep reducing our budget. The present administration has to find 75 million of cuts in the next 4 years. And that's a lot of money. It's about 10% of the...
From all boroughs or just Harrow?
No, every borough. Every borough find a certain... Our share is 70... Because when they give us the money, they're giving us that much less. So we have a gap in our budget of 75 million. And we cannot raise it from council tax because the people won't pay or can't pay. It depends. You get it. And so some of the things coming out that people must do you close the museum? Do you close the art center? Do you get rid of staff? The previous administration actually got rid of the chief executive. Just deleted the post. Yeah, but that was saving £1 million over 4 years. Wow. So radical as it sounds, and the wisdom there was actually we cannot afford this top-heavy system. We need people on the front line. So rather, let's cut the top and have people who deliver services, from the street cleaners to the bin collectors. Those are the people we need to have more than people doing strategy, etc. Maybe people need to think it through. But this administration is thinking of bringing back the chief executive. So you're in a dilemma. You need to cut, and yet you're spending on things that don't seem to matter.
Wow. So things like, Harrow's got police, Harrow's got fire service, you have teachers, you have counsellors, you have, nurses that go door, house to house.
Public health nurses.
Public health nurses. So this 75 million, where are you going to take it from?
That's the is $1 million question. The thing is, our school's budget is protected, so you can't take it from there.
You have to give them that money.
That money is in a sense, it's just passported through the council. And most schools are getting more and more independent. They control their own budgets. So in fact, the local authority has to sell its services to schools. They have to want to buy that support.
To come and collect their rubbish or come and do this?
Exactly. Yeah. Because in fact, in terms of rubbish, some people go to external companies rather than the local authority. So the local authority has to be competitive in order to get people spending money with them, even businesses. We have things like business waste. Some people buy the services from the council, others don't. And if the council isn't competitive, people go outside, and therefore we'll have to cut more and more. Councils are also working across each other's borders. so that they can, they can make.
So you can have like a Wembley Barrow
Which is
services
Brent.
coming in here to come in.
So in fact, with Harrow, what we are doing, we're working with Barnet. So our legal services and Barnet Legal Services work under one umbrella, and they're based at Harrow.
So that you don't have to pay separately.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the management is shared and that sort of thing. In terms of public health, we're also doing that with Barnet. We are sharing that service. So it's, in terms of management, you are cutting the cost so that you can still deliver the cut. But it's still a problem we haven't resolved. And I think going forward, we're going to have very difficult times. Because they are even asking people who up until now were protected from paying council tax because either they didn't have the income to pay. And actually, the reason they were protected is they aren't in a position to pay. So you asked me how we think it can work. So it's those difficult questions that are coming forward.
Well, the council must be under pressure.
A big pressure.
I want to be a fly on the wall in the boardroom. I mean, the the meeting thinking.
It is difficult. Absolutely, it is extremely difficult. So when you look at that, you just see that life is tough. And I mean, to bring it to the Ghana situation, it's the same thing. At the end of the day, you have a budget, you have things you want to do, and there's a shortfall. You have to find creative ways, either generate income. I mean, while I was on the council, one of the things I was saying is that the council has huge assets. It needs to use it to generate money, rather than just wait for money from central government or wait for money from residents, which is the council tax. So for example, the council does registry marriages.
Yeah.
So, and the council has the meeting rooms. You could have a wedding service. We also have do you get it? We can be a little more creative with our resources.
The spaces out.
And therefore, we do it already, but not in a very, creative way, in order to say that if we do this and we generate this surplus, we can keep this service going. So that proactively thinking of, so rather than saying, oh, we will cut and come up with solutions like, let's move the services to Wales, that takes away the local economy.
How about leisure centres? Can you touch them?
We have actually already outsourced our leisure centre.
Wow.
You get it? We've outsourced our library. And sometimes you look at all these things and instead of maybe being more creative about how we run it, we have gone the so-called private sector route, which is not always the best. It doesn't always deliver. And that's what we seem to have done in Harrow.
Now, being that you're an African, you're black, and on top of it all, you're a woman, was it difficult getting where you were? I mean, did you...
In a sense, maybe there are two things. The Labour Party, as a party, had decided that they needed gender equality. So what they had done is that as far as possible, they wanted a woman in every seat. So the 3 councillors, at least one must be a woman. It so happened that Edgeware was, so there were 2 women. But it was also that sort of made it easier, because you had people sort of looking for women.
Okay.
Whereas before they marginalized women, the women, very capable women. I know that, for example, my colleagues in the Conservative Party feel that, why do you have to make allowances? It's not so much. It's just that women work differently. Men can be more pushy. I mean, one of our big jokes is that a man needs to know 20% of a thing to go for a job. A woman wants to know 80% of it before she thinks she should put herself forward. So it's a different attitude. So you find men very pushy about going forward, and they learn on the job. Some of them are extremely good, but starting out, they are not quite there. And you find a lot of capable women holding themselves back. So that was Labour's answer to it. Make sure that women have to be selected. They even have that for party conference. You have to alternate. If you send a man this year, next year you have to send a woman. And they do not accept the excuse, we couldn't find a woman. Tough, then send nobody. It forces parties, local parties, to look out for women who can represent people. So that partly is the story. I was asked, as I told you, I was asked by another woman that I should stand. She was retiring and moving to Wales. And I did stand, I went forward. And you find that actually you're quite able to hold your own. So
I think during your term, you were sort of twin-towning with Accra, with the mayor.
That's interesting. No, actually, I came to Accra partly because my dad was turning 90 and I had to be there for the celebration.
Okay.
But it's funny. So we decided to call on the mayor of Accra, and we came up with this thing that Accra has a number of sister cities, whereas Harrow has only twinned with one, as a small town in northern France, Douai. and that's the only city we've twinned with. And I thought this was a wonderful opportunity. And in fact, Accra will be doing Harrow a favor. I look at it as it's rather, because it's like this city, a capital city, wanting to twin with a suburb. You know, it's like twinning with New York, if you get what I mean. So to me, Accra will be doing us a favor. We were in a turbulent political situation in Harrow, so it's not something I was able to push forward. But I think this is something going forward that we need to consider. Having said that, Africans are a minority in Harrow. We're about 5%, 6% of the population, but we punch above our weight. So having said that, why not? Why not?
Well, we look forward to Accra twinning with Harrow, but not only should we twin, we need to learn, even though we are the bigger boys and everything. I think we need to learn the cleanliness and the orderliness and everything, and in the next segment, that's what we are going to look at. Stay tuned, we're coming back. Well, hello, and I told you, you know, we've talked about the brain system. This is one of our gallant women who should have been in the thick of things, moving and shaking things, but his words have been very inspiring, particularly to the youth. Be angry, not violent, be angry, be frustrated, don't be a pushover. And then to you, the high authorities, don't accept soldiers when you are sick. Ask for doctors, demand doctors and nurses who are qualified for the job. So you know what, there was about a seminum, so take it. And are you going to come back home, or you settled now?
God willing, God willing. I mean, these things, it's also about opportunity. I mean, in Ghana, I left Ghana partly because there was, you know, my husband and I started the container stores in Ghana around in Sound Junction.
So you were the guilty party?
Guilty of what? It was entrepreneurship. It was thinking outside the box.
Now there's container shops everywhere. And I walk around Harrow and I haven't seen one container shop on the
because
pavement.
you can get... why we started is you couldn't afford the advanced rent, the premiums they were asking for. So we're thinking these containers were lying about the place. Why not turn it into something you can use? And that's why we started. So the first container shop was us at that on the Sawam Road there, and it was interesting. But it was a time of turbulence in Ghana, and you got arrested just for selling things, and it was those kind of days. And so happened my husband was born here. So at one stage he came here. So when I finished my national service, I joined him with my two boys, and my two girls were born here. So brought up children here and all that. But home always has that pull. But one of the things is home has to also want people to come back, and has to be wanting to change and not wanting to look out to Europe and America as the saviors. We are our own salvation.
Let's go back to the two boys and two girls. I think that's a perfect combination. Doesn't get better than that. But, so the two boys were born in Ghana,
one in Kolebu and one at White Dove Hospital.
Were they a bit older before they came?
No, they were. I think they were. One was 3 and the other just, you know. So they were very young.
Oh, okay. Well,
very young. So they really grew up here.
I see. I see. I was trying to find out if there was any difference between those who grew up in Ghana, but it wouldn't work.
No, they didn't have that opportunity.
Have they been back since you?
Yes, they go back. They've gone back for things like that, 90th, the 80th, 85th, things like that. And in fact, my daughter, Rachel, chose to do some work experience in Ghana, actually wanted to. So she did something at Achimota Primary. Yeah, so there's been things like that, wanting to do things like that.
Do they have connection, like we want to go back home Ghana, or they are more...
I think they see Ghana at the moment as a place where you go for holidays, and they love it because they're there for a short time. So in spite of the power cuts and water cuts and water shortages, they've got cousins who, interesting, my brother's children were born in Manchester but went to school in Ghana, did their secondary school in Ghana. So they look at so they know their cousins, and they go there and they like to, be with them. But I think life in Ghana has possibilities that this place stifles you. So they see that. And I think they do enjoy something about Ghana. There's something fantastic about our continent, in fact, our country, which we need to realize we've got. So
tap into it. One thing that strikes me is walking around Harrow is that nobody has walls or big gate or electric fences.
Oh, we do.
Everybody,
You haven't been on Harrow on the Hill.
well, okay. You go to Harrow on the Hill with the very, very expensive houses, are probably gated. But I guess about 95% of Harrow wouldn't have those walls or gates.
No, we are lucky. We're the safest borough in London. We're very proud of that accolade. I'm sure my borough commander will be happy for me to say that since he came, we've managed to get back to being the safest borough in London.
How is that achievable?
Well, it's teamwork. It's work between the police and the community. So you have the police having safety messages about what is acceptable and also people being careful. Around this time when we have a lot of Asian festivals, we have Navratri, then we have Diwali, and our Asian community likes to flaunt their gold. So they become targets for robbery. Okay. So they teach us safety, how you look after your things, and how, there are little simple things like don't have it on show, while you're walking in town. Wait till you get to the event and things like that.
Okay.
So little things, sometimes in winter people will leave their car running to warm up the engine. They're inside. it's like you're asking somebody to drive your car away. So things like that. You get, the lessons about don't do it, and it helps.
How do you manage to keep the streets clean and there's no...
Oh, we find the streets dirty. People, if you hear Harrovians, they tell you that this borough is dirty. So, no, it's an attitude.
I don't know whether it's where I'm coming from or...
No, there are places which are very clean. And in fact, I remember the ward I used to represent, Edgware, it's filthy. But if you go to Pinner, you go to Hatchend, it's cleaner. So it's a mixture of people's behavior and the fact that, yes, the borough does do a good job in cleaning. But with the cuts, one of the things that is cut is the frequency of cleaning. So one of the things is that people have to take care of their environment. And you'll find people doing that, or people trying to rally others to take responsibility. Littering is one. In fact, one of the things that Harrow is now consulting on is whether we should have on-the-spot fines. It's partly to change behavior. Because some people feel, oh, since I'm paying tax, and since we're paying cleaners, I can just drop it on the floor. Well, you shouldn't do that, because you're only making the situation worse.
How about schools within the borough? Is it the borough's concern to make sure that the schools do well, so that it's add to your credibility, like schools in Harrow are good, or that's independent, they do their thing?
Oh, we care about the schools. I mean, we are very proud that we are always in the top 10 of schools. In fact, there was a couple of years ago, the best primary school in the whole country was in Harrow. Wow. So it's something that we care a lot about our schools. And these are our state schools.
And of course you have Harrow School.
We have Harrow School. We have John Lyon. We have Harrow School, which is world famous. And in fact, 7 British prime ministers went to that school.
7?
7. So it is quite an interesting. And of course you had poets like Byron, Sheridan, Trollope, and writers like Trollope were there. So it was quite a school that brought out a lot. But I think it's also a focus on excellence. And Harrow, as a rule, cares about standards of education. And then our population as well. They come from cultures where, not caring about education is like unacceptable. You must do well in school. Education is a passport, it's a key to so many things. So we do care about education and we push our children.
Would you find that maybe different boroughs will have certain things that they care more about, or is it cross-border? There'll be a borough who...
No, there is cross... You are right, some boroughs don't care as much. I mean, the joke my mace bearer used to give was that the reason why Harrow schools are good is that we have good teachers, we have clever children, but we have very pushy parents. And it's that. No, because honestly, if you have parents who don't seem to care, standards in Brent are not as high as in Harrow. And that's partly...
That's a neighboring...
That's a neighboring borough. So it's also about us wanting...
So what would a borough be in Ghana? Like a district, you see? I think like a district, or...
I suppose so. So what would you call La? Would you call it a district?
I think so.
Yeah, so then it's that. Yeah. So that would be a borough. It's a district.
Okay.
It is about that. Yeah. So...
Okay.
Yeah. I suppose that's the equivalent to closest.
So how is that influence? Is it from the top, or is it just you just find a collective people in the area who seem to have the same passion?
I think it's as if the like attracts like. People in Harrow just care about education. And in fact, sometimes there's culture clash. that you see amongst people. You see that people coming from the Indian subcontinent and from Africa have this thing about our children must go to school. In fact, they don't want them spending too much time playing football and things like that. Let them study. And then you find maybe our more indigenous population, including those who were born here, thinking, oh, give them leisure time. You find some of our parents going to school, especially preschool, and they're playing and thinking, if they were back home by now, they know their time's table. So you get this push that, I'm sorry, all this play, they can play later, let them study. So that helps to push our teachers that. And sometimes they do tell the parents of, oh, let the children play. And then sometimes the parents are saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Where we come from, they need to study. We haven't got time for this play.
This play business.
Yes. I mean, although you can learn through play. I mean, to be serious, each group has a point. But I think this focus on boundaries, on respect, and I think for a lot of African and parents from the Caribbean, we feel that sending your children home sometimes helps because they come back with a sense of respect, which the children here seem not to have.
Again, one thing I find, like I come into Harrow, and I can find almost every amenity. I can find a bank, a school, a hospital, a library, fire service, there's everything here. Is it the state's idea or is it the borough's idea to have so that I can literally live in Harrow and not ever leave it?
Yeah, but having said that, some of the things are changing. Our banks are closing. So banks, there is the bankers who decide. They might move out. So we've had a number of banks close. So you'll have places where there are no banks anymore. You have to come to the center and things like that. But in terms of planning, from the local authority point of view, we do try and make sure that each area is self-contained, that people have a library. So Harrow, for example, we're very proud of the fact that we had 11 libraries, which is now 10. So you can see, and it might go down now, that people are within walking distance of schools. They're within walking distance of a library. Because I think the collective wisdom has been that these things are important. But now we're all going to be tested. What do we think is important? Do we think it's important to have libraries? A lot of people will say yes, especially as they make houses are smaller and smaller. If children want to study, they need to go to a space which is amenable, and that is the challenge going forward.
So that won't come from a Harrow decision. That will be the whole states deciding that planning idea? Or?
No, that's from you. We plan locally. You plan locally because it's kind of devolved. Although having said that, we do have another tier of government. We have the London Assembly, which, because people realize that, okay, boroughs are all well and good, but some things need to be pan-London. Because if you live next to Brent, you get it, your immediate area that you would go to might be Brent and not Harrow. So we need to have some things which are planned across the whole area. So that's the other thing. So we have that. So we have some pan-London planning, and hopefully that will make decisions better.
I mean, obviously you've been to Ghana and you've seen our planning. So what are your frustrations with our planning?
I think sometimes, I mean, especially when you look at, we've had building free zones that everybody ignores, like Jaw Willow. If you, from the Ghana, Jaw is a big valley, and it was not supposed to be built in. We built in happily, and now the next time there is a big rainfall, there's flood, then we wonder, oh, why are places flooded? We are actually on the same fault, I think, in terms of earthquakes as California. We're on the San Andreas fault. So there were areas in Accra where we were not supposed to build because we're on an earthquake fault. And I think the last earthquake was in, was it in the 40s? So we're quite ripe for an earthquake. And when it happens, those of us who've built on those places where we were not supposed to build might reap the consequences of that. So my frustration, we don't like to obey rules, or rules are always for other people. And in Ghana, everybody is important, so we all manage to...
Do you know me?
Exactly. Do you know who I am? Yeah. So we avoid obeying the rules, and that hasn't been good for us. We need to go back to that understanding that those rules are for the collective benefit of the whole community.
Now, Asante, what can we do with our education back home? Because we are struggling a bit with education.
I think it's a worldwide phenomenon. We're all struggling with it.
Right?
We're all struggling. I think what it is that we need to realize that we are not alone. Everybody is struggling, but we need to know that it's also important that we learn more about things that will help us. I don't think it helps us that one of my frustrations with Ghana, we always seem to be looking to the outside to solve our problems. The solutions are within us, and we need to have more confidence in each other. You know, I've noticed, like somebody said, we've got Bluffonio syndrome. If a solution comes from you, I don't want it. But if a white face brings it, then that one I think is okay. And we need to stop that nonsense. If the solution coming is a good one, we need to evaluate it. And it doesn't matter if it's coming from an African. We need to, you know, go for it.
No, Asante, I can't go without, you know, talking a little bit about your
The badge.
beautiful badge there, saying that you're the mayor.
Past mayor.
Past mayor. So you got to keep it.
You do. You're given this at the handover, when you hand over to the next mayor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you need to talk about this. The mayor of Accra gave it to me.
Thank you very much, Oko van der Poy.
He did.
Asante, this is all time will allow me, but I've been very grateful. It's been very insightful, and there's been really some profound things being said in this interview, even though undertone were very highlight, and I think we need to all take it on board. The youth get frustrated by your system and agitate for positive change. And those of you who are leading, don't be a pushover. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, until I come back to you again, have a beautiful day.